Welcome everybody to today's training on the Newforma project information link. My name is Lori Lambert. I am a senior training consultant with Newforma. If you've been in any of my other trainings before or any other Newforma trainings, you're probably used to what we do. We're going to do a short PowerPoint and then I'll go right into Project Center and we'll talk about all the different parts of the project information link. And I'm pretty laid back when it comes to training, so I will ask along the way if you do have questions. But like I said, at any time, if you do have questions, just unmute yourself, ask your question or type it into the chat window and I'll monitor that as we go along. So the Newforma project information link is a way to be able to link data and PDF exchange between Revit and Newforma so that we can assist with doing some of the things that you do in Revit and not having to duplicate them with Project Center. So the big thing, the thing that most people use the project information link for is to print a PDF. So you can use the Newforma PDF driver to print and organize and even name your PDFs, easily create them and control the naming of the PDFs and control the print location, which is really important for a lot of people. We can also synchronize sheet data. So we can, manage it from Newforma or Revit and synchronize that information, between the two regarding name, number, revision data, and it's only the start. So you can sync almost any Revit parameter between the two. So if you want to sync, issue date, plot date, sheet size, scale, etc., you can synchronize all of that sheet data and manage it between Newforma and Revit. We're also going to talk about synchronizing room and space data between the two, as well as you can see all the different parameters. And it's just like the sheet info, Revit room, space parameters, and synchronizing between those two is pretty seamless, so that if you do have people that need to be able to access some of that Revit information, but they don't have Revit installed, you can synchronize it and then it can be managed within Newforma and synchronized back into Revit. So you do have a little bit of flexibility there. And when we talk rooms and spaces, just so that you're aware, it's depending on what you're doing, a room or a space may be an actual room, but it might be just an area. So that's why we say room, space, area between the two. So the agenda today, we're still getting a little background noise from somebody if everybody could mute because we are recording. Okay, so the agenda that we're seeing here, we're going to talk about setting up the project information link. So how do we get that add-in into Revit? We're going to talk about document control. So how we can populate the document control in Newforma from Revit. The spatial index, so how we can also populate and manage that information between the two. The elements, and then also linking action items and markups from Revit into Project Center. So if you've ever done action items before and you wanted to pull in something from Revit, we'll talk about how we can create that action item or even a markup within Revit and have it pull over into Newforma so that it can be managed through Newforma Project Center. Okay. So let's go ahead and exit out of there. Let me just minimize that. And let's get into Project Center. And that's not the one I want to be in. There we go. So we're going to talk about the different things here within Project Center, and we're right here at a project home. So the first thing we want to talk about is how do we get the project information link, the Revit add-in, into Revit. So from the project home, we can just come up here to our preferences here and come down to the bottom for preferences. So if you may have used this button before if you were doing the My Projects or setting up some of your project home contents or things like that. Some of you may have not seen this button before, but we just click here on the preferences and we come down to this bottom portion for preferences. And here in the bottom, we're going to see this Newforma project information link section. And we want to check off the box for all of the versions of Revit that we have installed on our desktop that we want to be able to use the Revit add-in for. So if you're actively using, all of these, you would want all of them checked so that the Revit add-in is added to that version of Revit on your desktop. It only has to be done once. But if you get once 2017 comes out and we have it enabled for Newforma, you'll see it here in the options. So once you have the latest version installed and you have maybe 2017 installed, you might want to just come back into this preferences and click on the preferences and come down here and check the box for Revit 2017, and then you just have to click OK. So if you already have Revit installed, you'll want to, or open, you'll want to close Revit, enable the add-in, and then reopen Revit. If you already have Revit open and you install it, you'll just want to close it and reopen it. So it just won't automatically appear if you already have it open. So when you do have it installed and you have Revit open, you'll notice there will be a new tab up here at the top for Newforma, and we'll talk about these items here in just a second. So just letting you know that that's what it's going to install. And we're going to talk about how we add those models. So there's two different ways. If we come down here to our building models and elements, there's two different ways to add the models and link them to Project Center. The first is manually. So I've manually added one here. I could say register model, and here under my tasks, and I can give it a name, and I can browse to the location of that model file, right, on my network. So I could pull that in and give it a description, etc. And that would register the model here, and it would show here within the building models and elements. And again, if you are internal, you'll be able to, and access this project, you would be able to see all of the building models that have been registered for this project. Now the other way is directly from Revit and have it pull in. So there's advantages to both. This one, when I look at this model and I say modify, I can keep a lot of additional information in here, right? I can put in the author, the discipline, the members, here's my model. I could put in description. I could have supporting documents, maybe relate it to something else, etc. And I have a change log, right? If I create it from Revit and register it from there, it will fill in some of this information, and I can come back here and modify it if I want to, but things like description don't come in. I don't have that available when I register from Revit. So I have some different options that are available to me depending upon where I register the model from. So let's take a look at that. So if I pull up my, does this work with collaboration on Revit on Autodesk 360? So John, I'll have to research that question because I don't know the answer to that one. So I will have to double check on that one. And Charlie, I will respond to you on that question that John has. So John, I'll get back to you on that one. Okay, so if I have my model open in Revit, and like I said, you'll have this new button once you have the add-in installed. You'll have this button for Newforma. So I have a couple things here. Now, if this is a model that is not registered, the button over here on the left will say connect. So it's telling me that this model is not connected, it's not registered in Project Center, which is fine. I can still use the Revit add-in partially because you'll notice this document control is also available to me. The others are grayed out, but the document control, if I click on that, I can still publish sheets to PDF and have all of the flexibility that I'm going to have with the Newforma add-in even if I don't have this model registered. So you don't have to register every model if all you're going to do is publish sheets, if you're never going to use the document control, if you're never going to use it for markups or action items or synchronize elements or spatial index. You could still just publish sheets, or if it's just something on the fly, you just need to publish sheets. If you have the Revit add-in, you can still publish sheets and have that flexibility, which we'll see in just a second. But if I want to be able to connect it and register it and have all of these other options, I would just simply click on the connect. and then it's going to say register model. So notice when I click the connect, in the document control, I can still only publish sheets to PDF, but I do get the markup sessions available. But I still want all of this other information available to me. So I'm going to say register model. And again, I only have to do this once. Once it's registered, you know, I don't have to do this ever again, right? It's going to tell me my Revit file, and it knows by the location what project this is related to. So it knows the project number, the project name, the status of the project, and the client, because that's all pulling from the project setup in Newforma. So it knows by this location what this should be. So I'm just going to say OK. And it's going to register my model, and now all of my other items become available. And if we come back to Project Center and we refresh our screen here on our models, notice here's the one that I just registered, and I can click the modify, and notice it pulls in the model file location. It's got the name of the project. I could come in and modify this if I need to. I could add authors, members, description, discipline, etc. No problem, right? It's just that when I register it from Revit, it just pulls in this generic name and doesn't fill out all this additional information. But like I said, it can be modified, so no big deal, right? Okay, so we've got our model registered, right? So I don't see the connect or the register model button over here on the left. So then the next thing we're going to talk about are all of these different options, and we're going to kind of work right to left. So we're going to work a little bit differently here than what we normally read. But I'm going to come into my document control, and I'm going to talk about publishing sheets to PDF, this first option. So this is if I just want to publish the sheets, I want to be able to print them maybe, and I want to be able to have those available for, you know, maybe I want to send them somewhere else, but I'm not populating document control in Newforma, which we'll talk about with our next step. So these are, I'm selecting my sheets to publish. So I have, you know, maybe these, and I'm only going to choose a few here. And I can see here I've got my PDF driver is the Newforma PDF. Now we can change that. We'll talk about that in a second. My setup name, Newforma in session. My PDF quality is default, but it could be screen, ebook, printer, prepress, whichever I need here. Hyperlink sheet numbers, so not needed to print in. And then I have to define the folder location for storing my PDFs. So I want to use the publish settings below. So this is where I'm going to choose where am I publishing my folders or my files. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipsis. And maybe I want to put these on my desktop. So I'm going to put them, I have a published folder already. I could publish them in there. I published some yesterday, so I have some. Notice it does a date. I did one combined and one individual sheet, but I'm just going to push them in that folder. If I was doing the synchronize and add revisions, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, I would also want to choose a folder as well. So maybe I want them to go into a specific folder on the network. So let me say here, I'm going to call it publish PDFs. But I could choose any folder within Newforma or within the network that I want to choose. And then here's where I can name my files. So if I'm doing individual sheet PDF file names, it's by default going to pull sheet number, sheet name, current revision number. But notice that I could change this. So if I wanted to hard code some things in here, I could hard code it. I could just type it in here. If I wanted to pull in different fields, I can do that as well. So maybe I want to pull in, you know, current revision number, and then hyphen, and then maybe current revision date, right? And I want to insert that there. And I could move these around and put them in different places. That's no problem. If I'm doing a combined sheet PDF, then I have it project number hyphen project name hyphen date time. But again, I could pull in different things in here, and I could also hard code some of these. So if you wanted to put in check set or for review, or whatever it happens to be, I could hard code that in when I do my publish options and have that hard coded for that one time. Now it is a sticky setting, so it does remember what you typed in the last time. So if you are going to hard code things in, I would suggest every time that you go into publish, if you don't want it to always say the same thing with the hard code, I would say just come into your publish settings and just verify that it's going to name it what you want it to name, right? So you can always modify those. Our page setup. So here's our PDF driver. So we have the Newforma PDF. It also supports Adobe, Bio, and Bluebeam PDF. And then we have all of our different page setups. So we have like the paper size, the placement, the orientation, the appearance, etc., the zoom, different options in here, no problem. And I'm just going to say OK here. Then we have our Revit parameters. So I could pull in additional Revit parameters if I want to be able to sort or filter by those Revit parameters. So if I wanted to sort by design by or something like that, I can do that. And you'll notice here I have this big triangle. And if I click on a different one and a different one, notice I have 3 different ways to sort from most important to least important. So if I wanted to make that the most important, I could make that the largest triangle, and then least important, and then least important. So I have 3 different levels here of sorting with the 3 different triangles. So that's why another reason why you might want to pull in some of those additional Revit parameters, because they would show here as additional columns, and then you could sort or even filter, because notice I have little filters in here. I could filter by those columns as well. So we have all of our filtering, we have our publish settings, we have our Revit parameters that we've talked about, and then we have this ability here to combine selected sheets into one PDF and open in Windows Explorer after publish. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to choose, actually I'm going to make one less page to make it a little bit faster. And the folder you're publishing is not a project folder. Do you want to continue publishing? Sure. Yeah, no problem. It's just telling me that it's not a network folder for this project. That's okay. I'm just publishing to my desktop. I could publish into a project folder if I wanted to, but I don't. So it's going to go through here and it's going to publish those. It'll take just a second. It always seems like when we do training, things go never as fast as they do when it's back at your desk. So give it just another minute. Looks like it's on 3 of 4. Should be just finishing up. Okay, once it combines them, it should open it up in Windows Explorer because I asked it to. There we go. So it's in that published folder on my desktop with today's date. And if I open this up, I've got, all of my little thumbnails here, and I can go through, and it's a combined PDF. No problem. And if I wanted to, I could send it via Info Exchange if I really wanted to, send it. Just to show you the ones that I did yesterday. So if I go back up to my published folder, I have one here that was my combined PDF. Now, since it was on the same day, it put that _1, and it is date and time stamped. And here's the one where I just split out all the pages. So there's a little bit of flexibility here with how you publish those and what's available to you. So that's if I'm just publishing, right? I'm not affecting anything in Newforma. I'm not modifying document control, any of that, adding revisions, etc. So that's what I would use the synchronize and add revisions for. So down here under my document control, the synchronize and add revisions. And if I come back to Project Center, let me go back to my project home. And I'm going to come into my document control, and I'm actually going to change projects because I have a project in here that has actual documents and document control. So for those of you who may not have seen document control before, just to review, we have all of our sheets in here, and we can click on the plus sign and see the different revisions, if they've been issued, the revision date, etc. And normally, if we're not using Revit, we would need to manually add these and pull in the revisions. But if we have Revit and we're using the Revit add-in, we can populate all of document control and even populate all of the revisions. Now, the issuance would still be done through Newforma to track the issuance through InfoExchange. But if we're using the Revit add-in, like I said, we can populate all of this as well as all of the revisions in a much clearer way and a much more easy way, right? Because we're already in Revit, we might as well populate document control with those sheets from Revit. So to do that, I'm going to come over here to Revit. I'm going to come into my document control, and I'm going to say synchronize and add revisions, even if it's the first time that I'm adding sheets. So since it is the first time, it's going to tell me the following Newforma properties must be mapped and selected. Would you like the following mapping? So it's going to bring in, sheet name to title, sheet number to number, current revision date, and I'm just going to say yes. So it's going to pull in all of those properties to synchronize automatically. Now I can click on the sync settings, and I could choose, Revit parameters to map to Newforma properties. So if there were additional things that I wanted to map, then I could do that. So let me pull in, let's say, let's see if I have my approved, and let me pull in my Newforma. So I have my approved and approved. So I'm going to say, pull in the Revit parameter and map it to the approved by in Newforma. So I can either pull it Revit to Newforma, or I can choose the mapping behavior to go Newforma to Revit. So just because I map them doesn't mean I have to automatically always go Revit to Newforma. It can go Newforma to Revit. So I'm going to pull in the approved by. Let me see if I've got another one I want to pull in. I could say designed or drawn by. Let me pull in the drawn by there and map that as well. And I can say okay. If I had pulled it from, if I had already set this up for another project, I could import the mapping from another project. So just make sure, if you have it set up a certain way for a certain project and you want to pull it in for another project to have that same kind of mapping, maybe you're synchronizing a lot of sheet data on different projects, then I would say just import the project, and then that way you don't have to remember, oh yeah, which one am I pulling, and all of that. So I'm just going to say okay here. So I've got all of my properties here to sync, and it's going to show me which mapping behavior I want. And again, I could always change that if I needed to. And then I have, select the items to synchronize. So which ones do I want to synchronize? So I'm just going to pull in a few here. Actually, let me uncheck those real quick. I'm going to filter down to all of my C sheets, right? So I'm going to pull in some of those, and it's saying create Newforma record document, because it knows that these do not exist in Newforma right now. And it's got the sheet name, the revision, etc. Again, down here at the bottom, I have my publish settings, so I can see what folder on the network these are going to go to. And I have my file naming structure. And I'm going to say, okay, synchronize and add revisions. So it's going to go through my sheets, it's going to synchronize them and add them to document control. Now, while this is doing that, are there any questions, either through chat or if you guys want to unmute and ask a question?
Quick question is, while you're working in Revit, are you allowed to, or are you able to publish a lot of this information and still use Revit while this is being done in Newforma, or does it limit your operations in Revit?
I've never tried minimizing it, but I think it keeps it so that you have to wait till it finishes till you can continue. I can double check on that, but I think you do have to wait until it finishes the publish. Hold on, let me just make a note of that, because I'll double check on that to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So once it finishes the synchronization, it's going to tell you that the synchronization has completed. If there were any errors or warnings, it will let you know, and you can examine the synchronization log. So if I just click that and say, okay, it'll tell you, like if there were any errors or warnings, you would see them here, and then you could click on the report and print the report because maybe there's something that's not appropriate for the field. Maybe it's a date field or something and there's letters in there for whatever reason, something like that. Then you might have something that it would be in red and you would know to go fix it. So I'm just going to say close here. And if I come back to Newforma and I refresh my document control, here are the sheets that I just brought over. So notice that it fills out, it's got all of the basic sheet information that I'm synchronizing. If I click the little plus sign, it's going to tell me the revision date. The draft state is always, or the revision state is always draft because we haven't issued it yet. And it's got the location as the folder that I chose, right? So it's got all of that publish, right? And it's got the date and then the sheet. So it's got all of that information populated for me. Now, if I needed to, if you had somebody who was not a Revit user who needed to update this information, they could say edit in spreadsheet, because remember, we can synchronize between the two. They could pull this into the spreadsheet. They could modify, any of this that's in here. They could even add, maybe the revision here should have been 2 for all of these, right? So I could just pull this in and say 2 and copy those down. And then maybe I needed to add some more sheets. Maybe I need to pull in C101A and C102A. And when I say close here, it's going to say, do you want to save it? I'm going to save it. I'm going to import those changes back into document control. It's going to tell me it added those and made those modifications. Again, there's no sheet attached yet, right? So I might have to, either attach it on this side or the Revit side, but I've got these additional ones added and I've got them all saying revision number 2. And then I could synchronize back, because I can say synchronize and add revisions. And I could say, I've got some errors here, so I could say, oh, I need to none. This is already in here, so that's okay. So I don't want to change those maybe, but I do need to fix those ones. So I would have those different revisions. And then I've got, if I pull this back into C, there we go. So I've got new sheets coming in, so I need to also have those added as well. So I would create a new Newforma document. So I can synchronize that, or I could even synchronize the sheets here. So I could pull those in and say import sheet into Revit, and it will only synchronize whatever's new. So here, if I had these checked because, I'm only pulling in the C sheets, it knows that this like C106, 107, etc. don't exist in document control right now. So it would say create, that's why it says create, or it's saying synchronize because it knows that something changed. And then for the 2 new ones, it's going to say import. Well, I want to assign a title block maybe, or sorry, missing title block. Let's pull that in. And then I could say synchronize. So it's going to synchronize whatever I have checked. No errors or warnings. No problem, and it synchronizes between the 2. So this is really helpful. Like I said, if you do have people that are kind of maintaining the document control side of things, maybe they modify and update all of the metadata that you're storing here on the Newforma side, but they don't have access to Revit. Maybe they perform the issuance of documents, they put in those additional sheets because maybe they know that you're going to create them in Revit and you're going to synchronize them eventually. Maybe they have, like I said, all this metadata that you might choose as parameters to synchronize here into Revit, or properties into the Revit parameters, they might only be working in Newforma. Well, they can by all means do that edit in spreadsheet, and then you would just synchronize the sheets back into Revit and have that synchronization between the two. So it's really nice because that way you don't have to teach somebody Revit who's not a Revit user, but they can still modify information here and you can bring it back into Revit without issue. So it's that nice general flow of information. But like I said, you know, if you're adding revisions, if you changed a couple sheets, I would say do the synchronize and add revisions. That will add that new revision into Newforma in the document control. The synchronized sheets, if you're adding sheets or pulling in data from Newforma, maybe for new properties to parameters that you need to do, I would say go ahead and do that. And then you have the view in Newforma Project Center that you can pull that. Any questions on the basic document control? It'll be a little hairy the first time you do it. You know, it's always a little different, right? But it does allow you to have a lot of that heavy lifting that you would normally do in document control handled using the Revit add-in.
Can you show how to add a document package if you already have the PDFs made?
Oh, sure. So here, if I have the packages here, if I don't have any packages yet, I could just say create record document package, give it a name. So maybe this is all of my construction documents. I could name it whatever I want. And then I would choose to add my record documents. So maybe I'm going to pull all of these in. And then I could just say, okay. Now the record document package is really nice because when I'm issuing documents to people, I can just choose the package.
Where did you click to add that? That was really fast. Sorry, that's the thing I couldn't find.
Create record document package right here under the tabs.
Yeah, and then when you add where you add the documents.
Sure,
actually
no problem.
Go and select the PDF.
Right here on the record documents tab, I click add, and it will bring up all of the record documents that exist for the project. And I just clicked all of those and said okay.
Oh, so you have to add those somewhere else, because that's what I got there, and I was like, it's blank, and it won't let me
Oh
add it.
yeah,
So I have to go somewhere else
they
to
have
add those.
to already be here in the all record documents.
Okay.
Yep. So you would want to make sure that they were here in the all record documents, and then you would create the document package through that create record document package, and then you can just pick and choose which documents you want to add to the package. And then when I do the issue selected package, I can choose either the latest record document revision or a selected revision. In this case, I'm just going to choose the latest. And when I issue it, it's very similar to Info Exchange. So you would choose who you would send it to, send it via Info Exchange. It automatically associates all of my files because it knows what package I'm pulling, but I could add additional files if I wanted to. And the really nice thing is here in the two, if you had groups set up, I don't have groups set up in this one, but if you had like a construction group, you could just choose that group from the team and send it to them. So it saves you on two ends. You don't have to individually pick the people that you're sending it to, and you don't have to individually pick the documents because you're choosing the document package. And then it would just send via Info Exchange. Other questions on the document control? Okay. So then we'll move on to the spatial index. So here we can synchronize the spaces between Revit and Newforma. So it's very similar to how we do the document control. We have all of our properties to synchronize, right? Revit to Newforma, Newforma to Revit. We can add additional items to synchronize between the two. And then we're choosing select the items to synchronize. So if I make this bigger, let's go ahead and make that a little bit bigger here on screen so you guys can see it a little bit easier. There we go. So because I've never created these before in Newforma, it's saying create Newforma space because my spatial index currently is blank. So if I go back here to Newforma, my spatial index is blank. And I want to pull in all of these spaces. So I'm just going to say synchronize. And now if I refresh my screen, I have my 177 spaces from Revit that are populating my spatial index. Again, if you have someone who is not a Revit user but they are in Newforma, they can do the edit in spreadsheet here and modify these. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's pull in CORR for corridor. Maybe I don't want it to say CORR, I want it to actually say corridor. I could say edit in spreadsheet. I could come down here and I could pull in corridor, and everywhere where it says CORR, I could pull those in, save it, pull it in into Newforma. So we're going to pull those out, refresh it. For some reason it's not updating mine. And then I could still use the spatial index to synchronize my spaces between the two. So it's going to tell me synchronize because all of these spaces do exist. It's just they're now getting updated to say corridor instead of CORR. Hopefully all of mine are updating. And then I'm just going to say synchronize to synchronize between Newforma and Revit. So it's the same deal here. Like I could do the edit and I could add additional spaces. So if you have someone who maybe there's a spreadsheet that they pull in for every project, maybe they, they add one and then they do the edit in spreadsheet and then they plop in all the other sheets, or sorry, all the spaces, and then you do the synchronize and it synchronizes back into Revit to have all of those spaces available. So you can add them, you can modify them, etc. from Newforma and have them synchronized back into Revit with one easy step with the synchronization, but everybody doesn't have to have a Revit license to be able to do that, right? So they can modify these from here, add new spaces, and then synchronize back into Revit using that spatial index. And again, view in Project Center. The building elements work the exact same way. I can synchronize my elements between Revit and Newforma. And then I could choose the items to synchronize. I don't have any in here, but I could add Revit elements if I wanted to, and then synchronize between the two. And again, the way that I access the elements is here under the building models and elements. A lot of people think it should be in a different activity center. It's not. It's just with the building models and elements. It's just here on the drop down. You would come into the all elements and you would see them here. You could edit them in spreadsheet. You could create new elements and then synchronize them back into Newforma if you needed to. Questions? Okay. So let's talk about two of the things that you've probably already seen in Newforma that you can create from Revit. That would be the action items and the markup sessions. So the action items here, I can identify an action item or identify for a specific element. So if I had, maybe this stairwell or something, I could come into my Newforma and say identify for element. It will open in Project Center and it will have the action item web dialog box. If how many of you have done action items before? Raise your hand in the chat window or in the meeting manager. So John has. Anybody else created action items before? No? Okay. Well, John, at least it'll look familiar to you. This is the same form that it is if you're creating the action item either from an email or from directly within the Action Item Activity Center. It will pull in as the subject the element that I identified. It's going to give it a due date 10 days from today, which is the default on this project in my version of Newforma. And fill all of it out. Action items equals lifesaver. I would agree, John. We'd use it internally to manage all of our project tasks, so I totally understand where you're coming from. I can put in an additional description here, but notice on the related items, it's going to relate it not only to the building model, but also to that particular element, which is really nice because it does it for me automatically because I'm pulling it from Revit. So I could just say, okay, this is my opening cut. I could fill in my additional information, or, and even if I don't know who I'm going to assign it to, I can just say create. And if I go to my action item activity center, it'll have a new action item in there. And at our next meeting, maybe we need to identify who's going to do that action item. So I can pull it directly while I'm working in Revit. If I see something that needs to be taken care of, I can identify the element, or I could just say action item identify. It's just going to pull in the name of the building model and only relate it to the model, but I could have additional description, assign it to people, etc. The really nice thing about that, though, if I do know the element that is the problem, I can click on it and it will be referenced in the action item itself, which is really nice. So I do have that flexibility and capability to be able to create the item, manage it through Newforma, but have it come from the model and have it referenced in that registered model, which is really good. So those are the action items. The markup sessions, I can send a snapshot, I can mark up a snapshot, and I can mark up a snapshot of the elements. So let's start with this first one, send a snapshot. I can just click on this. I think we might have a question here. I'm going to click and drag, so I'm just going to, sorry, mouse doesn't want to work. I can click and drag to take a photo. So it's going to take that photo. It's going to create an email. And attached to it is what I took a photo of. Now I could have zoomed in and then taken a photo, taken a snapshot, but it's really nice because I can have just that part and it's attached to the email automatically. I could send it to whomever I want, and then notice send and file in project because I'm sending it via email. I can choose what project this is associated as, right? So I could just send this to somebody and say, hey, can you take a look? You know, maybe it's not action item worthy yet, but maybe I just need somebody else to take a look at it to say, is this right? You know, is this really what's going on? And I can have that snapshot available to me. The other good thing that I can do with this, as that second item with the markup session, is I can say Markup Snapshot. So if I zoom in, let's say to that part, okay, so if I zoom in just a little bit more, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, I can say Markup Snapshot. I can still take my snapshot, right? It's going to open it here in just a second in the viewer. And then I have all of my markup tools available to me. So I could draw a cloud, put in a leader with a call out, who knows? I always make up stuff when I'm trying all this. Ooh, let's take that black there. That's good. And then maybe I need to put a shape around it, move it up here maybe, and then maybe to add another leader and point it over there, right? And then I can create an action item from this file. So I could just do action item, and then I can assign it to whomever I want, create it. I could also save it as a markup session if I wanted to, maybe save it, you know, to my project, etc. So I have a lot of options from that markup session of the snapshot from Revit without having to do a lot of heavy lifting really, because I'm probably already doing the markup and maybe I just need the markup as just part of this sheet. I want to be able to have that flexibility to do that. And then I can say markup snapshot of element. So let me identify my element first. And then I can come back here to Newforma, markup snapshot of element. Again, it's going to open it in the viewer. But it'll have that element highlighted for me, and then I could still do the markup. I could still do the action item creation, etc. Questions? I know it's a lot in the brain.
So can you click markup session, and when it pulls up the snapshot, then you can create an action item out of that screenshot with your markup on it? I kind of...
Yeah, so when you do markup snapshot, I could mark up there. I choose my snapshot. It's going to open it in the viewer. And then I could mark it up from here. So like I did, I could just say markup and then do that. And then I could, right up here at the top, create a new action item from this file.
So cool.
Or even if you wanted to, you can create a PDF from here. So if you wanted to flatten it into a PDF to send to somebody, or if you're doing contract management, you could even record a workflow action. So maybe you're reviewing something and you're recording your reviewer response and you're reviewing it in Revit. You could pull it, the snapshot into here and say record workflow action. And you could choose, you know, whether it's part of an RFI, a submittal, record reviewer response. I don't have any under review in this project, but it could be part of any part of these contract management items, and you could record a workflow action. So maybe it's an RFI, maybe you're creating a submittal, maybe you're doing a reviewer response, maybe it's, you know, respond and close, whatever it happens to be, but you can actually pull it from the snapshot from the sheet in Revit into the viewer and create that. But even so, even if you weren't doing that, you could still create a PDF or send a PDF from here with the markup and the snapshot from Revit, just as like a one-off if you needed to do it. It's pretty cool. It's very powerful. Questions?
I think the screen at the top is not visible fully because I was trying to understand how to get the snapshot.
Oh, from Revit?
Yeah, right. In other words, once you get the snapshot, how do you create an action item from that?
Okay. So when I do the, if I wanted to do either the action item from here or the markup, I would just say markup snapshot, and then I take the photo with the little camera here. It opens it in the viewer. It may be difficult to see. Let me try if I minimize this. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier to see. Let me move that down and let me minimize that and that and that. Can you see the top toolbar that I have here now?
Yes.
Okay, so I created the action item from this little icon right here that looks like a list with checks, little red checks next to it, and then I just click on that, and that's when I get the action item web dialog box, and then I can fill out all of that information.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome, no problem. I know sometimes with GoToMeeting and my virtual machine, it's not easy to see. But yeah, all the tools are up here. So like that's where I got the create PDF, was that PDF button right there. And then I can choose the create or send PDF or that record workflow action. Other questions? Okay, so I would suggest, I mean, at the very least, if you guys go back to your desk and you have a model, even if you don't want to register it, I would say go into the document control and maybe try the publish sheets to PDF and, you know, try, you know, changing around some of the filters here. I would say don't publish all of your sheets because it might take a while to publish all of those. Let me try that question that we had earlier, though. Let me try to publish those. I'm going to just choose those, and if I say publish, yeah, see, I don't think I can Like I can't click into Revit, I have to wait till that's done. So that answers that question. If you are publishing a lot of sheets, you might want to do it before, you know, maybe if it's like 50 sheets or 100 sheets or however many sheets it is, you might want to wait until maybe the end of the day or you're getting ready to go into a meeting or something like that, because I can't do anything in Revit while it's doing that. So, but
one other question.
Sure, yeah.
Whenever you're publishing sheets to PDF, how are work sets handled? Are they automatically all turned on? Are they based on the current view that you have in Revit with work sets in their current condition, or how does that work?
So I am not a Revit person, so I will need to ask somebody internally how that works. So I am not familiar with work sets, so I will need to reach out to one of our internal folks that is and ask him, and I'll have to get back to Charlie on that one. So your question specifically is how does it handle the work sets when publishing?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, in other words, based just on the current session, or if it automatically assumes that all work sets are turned on, or you have to do that manually before you publish anything.
Okay. I will make a note of that, and I will get back to Charlie on that one.
Thanks.
Turn them on. Okay, other questions? Okay, so just as is it possible to unregister a model? David was asking about that. So yes, it is. All you would have to do is go back to your building models and elements within Project Center, because we do this all the time because we've reset our virtual machines. All I would have to do is just highlight this and delete it. And it just deletes the registered model, but I would still be able to access it in Revit. Obviously, it just breaks that link of the model being registered in Project Center. Okay, let's see. So just last housekeeping, again, you'll get a survey at the end of the, about an hour from now, and at the end of it, you will have an area to enter your AIA number if you want AIA Learning Unit credit, or if you belong to an association where you self-report continuing education, there is an area to request a certificate, and I'll email that to you if you request the certificate, and then that way you can use it as backup if you self-report continuing ed. But I wanted to thank all of you for your time and attention. I know it's a lot in the brain. Please get back and use it as soon as you can just to try to remember it. And Charlie, I'll get back to you on those remaining questions as well as with the recording of today's training. But thank you all and have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.